6 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking this week. Number 1, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So this week, a good matchup at the Seattle Seahawks. And their defense really can't stop anyone so far this season. George Kittle, he's going out there. He's making big plays for this Niner team. The last couple weeks since back in the lineup after missing Week 3's game, he's found the end zone. And this week at Seattle, where they've given up tons of points, 71 points the last 2 weeks. He's in top tight end this week. Number 2, Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders. This week, a tougher matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town. But last week, Brock Bowers, one heck of a play it was for him. A jump ball, came down with it, then yards after catch, took it to the end zone for a 57-yard touchdown. And Brock Bowers, I've said this a lot in my videos, a generational talent at the tight end position. He's a matchup problem for safeties, linebackers, and versus Steelers team, I think he could go out there and have a good game. And we just saw Jake Ferguson versus the Steelers last week. 6 catches, 70 yards. Number 3, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. McBride, it's been a decent year for him, but so far he's not putting up elite numbers like some of these other tight ends. But tight end's been a tough position this season, one of the worst we've seen in a long time. And this week in a matchup with the Green Bay Packers, where their defense is one of the better units in the league, I believe, but still in the middle of the field, I think Trey McBride could get open, make some plays. I know he was banged up with a concussion a few weeks ago, and he missed Week 4 game and then returned last week. So Trey McBride's still a solid tight end, and with a lot of tight ends struggling this year, he's still a top 5 option. Number 4, Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. This week, a great matchup with the Dallas Cowboys. They can't stop anyone. We saw Pat Freiermuth score a touchdown last week at the tight end position versus Cowboy defense. And Sam Laporta, we know, is a playmaker. I know he's definitely struggled. He was the number 1 tight end off the board in most fantasy drafts. But coming off the bye week and that ankle getting a little bit better and recovering now after we saw a nice Week 4 ball game before the bye for Laporta, I think he's locked in and has another good game. Number 5, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. So this could be a potential shootout between these two teams with the Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. And Jake Ferguson, he's the number 2 target in this offense for Dallas behind CeeDee Lamb. We saw it last season. We've seen it this season once again. And luckily, he only missed that 1 game in Week 2 with the knee injury. And since the return, he's been a top 7 option, worst case. So this week, like I said, a potential shootout between these two teams. I think Ferguson delivers. Number 6, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. He's been skyrocketing up the rankings quickly, is Tucker Kraft, over the last few weeks. Last week, found the end zone twice. Him and Jordan Love have a great rapport going back towards the second half of last season, where Tucker Kraft came in and played well from Luke Musgrave. And now with Love back the last 2 weeks, Kraft's picked up where he left off. So playing great football, good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals. And I think he goes out there, has another good game. Number 7, Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Goedert, he's been putting up some monster ball games in Weeks 3 and Week 4, especially that ball game versus the Saints for 10 catches, 170 yards in that one. But now with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith most likely returning in this week's game, he's going to be the 4th option on this offense. But still, it's a solid tight end that can run the routes, decent yard after catch tight end. And this week, it's not a great matchup, but still a matchup I think he'd go out there and exploit versus Cleveland Brown defense. So like I said, the numbers are going to drop off now with 2 great receivers returning in Brown and Devonta Smith. But still, Goddard, a solid tight end for most weeks, I believe, especially how weak it is this year. Number 8, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Pitts, he's a good tight end. He's been up and down so far this season, but last week a nice ball game for Pitts, 8 catches, 77 yards in that ball game versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This week a great matchup with the Carolina Panthers that can't stop anyone. And Kirk Cousins, I think obviously that was his coming out party last week. 509 yards and 4 touchdowns. Everyone got involved. Drake London over 150 yards. Darnell Mooney 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hodge the game-winning touchdown in that ball game, and Kyle Pitts got his targets and catches. So I think this offense is finally up to snuff, reaching its potential. And this week in Carolina, I think Pitts is in a good situation. Number 9, Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers, number 2 target in the offense behind George Pickens. And Freiermuth, he's been a steady tight end all season long. I know the ceiling isn't that high, but he's definitely good in PPR leagues, anywhere from 7 to 12 fantasy points, I believe. So this week, a good matchup with the Vegas Raiders. Their defense can't stop anyone. We've seen all season long teams go up and down the field on them. And we even saw last week the Denver Broncos score 34 points, where they're one of the worst offenses in the league. So this week, Freiermuth once again goes out there and has a good game. Number 10, Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. Dalton Kincaid, it's been 1 good game, 1 bad game type of deal for Kincaid this season. And this week, a tough matchup with the New York Jets, with tight ends haven't really done much damage to them this season. But Kincaid, he's an athlete as well. Not like a Brock Bowers type, but definitely a matchup problem versus safeties and linebackers. Last season, he was a first-round pick for a reason, 26 overall in the NFL draft. And like I said, he's going to have some good games and bad games. But this offense, they got to get things going, and they got to be more prepared, I think, to get that football spread out a little bit more. With Josh Allen, last week, it was just a down ball game in Houston, where the run game did most of the work, and the defense put them in good positions to score, even though they fell short. This week, the vision ball game, I think they rely on Dalton Kincaid a little bit more, even though it's a tough matchup. And I still believe he's a top 10 option. Number 11, Tyler Conklin, staying in the same game with the New York Jets. So the last couple weeks, tight end's been more involved in this offense. I know Garrett Wilson had 22 targets, but Conklin still went out there, had a good performance. And this Buffalo Bill defense, they're not the greatest of defenses, obviously, even though I think Buffalo, they could get pressure on Rodgers in this one, make him uncomfortable. And we know Rodgers isn't 100% as well with the knee injury. So Tyler Conklin, a tight end that could go out there and make plays for this New York Jet team, and definitely moving up the rankings the last couple weeks. Number 12, Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. It's been a mess for the most part this season at the tight end position for Baltimore, but last week we saw 3 catches, 13 yards, 2 touchdowns. And obviously I said sell Likely high because that's a fluky ball game, and from weeks 2 to 4, he didn't do anything after the breakout ball game in week 1 at Kansas City with 9 for 111 and a touchdown. So this week, this could be a potential shootout between the Ravens and the Washington Commanders coming to town, who are 4-1. But I think Likely, he's a big target. And I just believe he's above Mark Andrews in the pecking order in this offense, especially this season, finding the end zone 3 times, and Mark Andrews hasn't found it once yet. Number 13, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. Last week, most of that game, he didn't do much with Mark Andrews until the second half, where they had to drop back and throw their way back into the game and winning in overtime 41-38, where he finished with 9.5 fantasy points, is Mark Andrews. I've said this in other videos. I don't think he's 100%. But another couple good games in a row, Mark Andrews could start moving up the rankings. But like I said, the ceiling ain't high. This offense is about Lamar Jackson playmaking himself, Derrick Henry being a monster in the backfield with over 100-yard games, 3 games in a row. And also Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers, I believe, in this passing game are ahead of Andrews right now. But Andrews, like I said, last week a decent game, even though he did nothing in the first half of it. And maybe it starts to get him going. 14, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears. So Cole Kmet, I believe, he's really that number 2 option in the passing game right now. Obviously, it's DJ Moore. Keenan Allen, he's been non-existent and phased out a little bit over the last few weeks and still not 100% with his injury. And Rome Odunze, besides that one big ball game at Indianapolis, we've seen nothing from him. So Kmet, he's a matchup problem at the tight end position. We saw the big game for him in week 3 at the Colts, 10 for 97 and a touchdown. And the last couple weeks, the numbers haven't been all that great, but he's still a serviceable tight end with some games where he'll have a high ceiling. And this week, a good matchup versus Jacksonville in London in the 15th and final tight end I'm ranking. Staying in the same game, Evan Ingram of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll see what happens in this ball game for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. Ingram, he hasn't played since week 1, where he only had 1 catch for 5 yards in that game. Brian Thomas, the number 1 target in this offense. Christian Kirk, the last 3 weeks, he's been back to form, getting targets and making play. And like I said, this is a tough matchup at the Chicago Bears. So Evan Ingram, we know he's a great talent. Last season, over 100 catches, which is a big number, especially at the tight end position. But like I said, he wasn't healthy all season long. Maybe he's still not 100%, is Evan Ingram. And also, Brian Thomas is that number 1 target in this passing game. And I know they're going to want to run the football a little bit more as well, with Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne as 2 backs in that backfield who really emerged, especially as Bigsby. So Ingram, I don't have a high ceiling for him. But if you're in a pinch at the tight end position, I think he could be maybe a decent option. But like I said, the ceiling ain't that high, so that's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking for week 6 of the fantasy football season.